Okay, I'm going to attempt again to do Latvian Gambit number 9, as I believe that the F-file was quickly opened in this game. I can't remember whether D4 was pressured, but that's something we always attempt to do no matter what. And my preference is to castle kingside wherever possible. So let's take a look at this. Okay, white is moving, standard moves. Stockfish 8 says cover it with knight to c6, enter a Roy Lopez or something. And now the engine is looking at e takes f5 as the strongest, which is unusual. Okay, and now knight to f6 it says is forced, which I don't play. And now we're down 1. So knight to e5. Knight to e5 is a good move, and it's one of the better moves we see in this kind of accepted situation. Now it says bishop to e2, threatening to come over to h5 check. If that's the case, the response I see is d6 for black, which I can't fully endorse. So I would move the bishop. I would move the bishop to e7 or c5, something like that, allow the check, move the king to f8, and then if the knight comes down forking, move the queen to e8, pinning the knight against the bishop. So now the recommendation is not taken. He moves d4. Now we move d6. We're going to have a good game now. Recommendation is knight to g4. About 90% of players move the knight to c4. We've now recovered our pawn, have basically an even game. Knight d3. This is a strong player, takes the computer recommendation. It is interesting to note that sometimes the computer recommends moving the bishop somewhere else. I always move it to g6. Now it's saying h4. Interesting, chasing that bishop already and setting some stuff up. Okay. So c4. c4, we haven't seen that move before in this particular situation. And what you're going to see is this particular engine is just in love with the move c5 against this. It'll die into move c5. And it's even going to stick to this for forever, basically, as long as it's available. And I'm not sure I ever played it in this game, but now it likes h4 again. h4, bishop to e2, now it wants c5 again. That's all right. So now we just castle. We're adhering to all of our basic principles. Once again, it wants h4, h4, h4. Look at that. h4 and push again. c5 again. Love c5. And now Stockfish 8 chimes in with you on c5 also. Okay, something to remember. Knight to c6, standard move. Now we're down about half a pawn again. And now it wants a3, because now it also is going to insist probably knight to b4 followed by c5, because we begin to get an anchor on d3 because of our bishop on g6. So this person ignores this advice and waits for the knight to hop there. Now wants a3 again. Once again, I'm moving my queen with lots of different ideas here. Knight to b4. Okay, so now what's revealed is I've moved my queen to e8 in order to move my knight to h5, which is a different kind of plan. It abandons d5, unfortunately. So I'm prepared to cover d5 by bishop to d8, which is a little kludgy, but it's practically only half a pawn down. And to me, getting a knight on f4 is an important step in this game. I love knights on f4 and f5. So you can't blame him for opening the long diagonal and pushing with tempo on this knight, except for one thing. The knight has a great spot on d3 coming up. So now we're going to see a gradual squeezing of this position. It says he's really supposed to try to chase it out of the, the bishop's going to have to move anyway after knight to d3, so we're not going to move it to d3 right away. Knight to f4 is played. It says he should move his knight up to b5. Once again, that's a good move because the right way of covering the square is bishop to d8, and that hems in my queen's rook. So instead he goes for some sort of strange cheapo check, which is covered by the knight on f4, so we can't really be sure of what kind of plan he's coming up with, but that is a half bad bishop over there, and he's trying to make it good. it would have been better off exchanging on d3 for something. So now we're going to move our knight on b to d3, attacking the bishop, and the bishop is going to retreat as opposed to him overloading his own queen, but he goes down quite a bit in evaluation. So now it wants me desperately to chase that bishop, and that's exactly what I do. Now I'm going to get a whole lot of A moves in a row here, I believe. Bishop to f6. Bishop to f6 is just, once again, generally taking complete control over a long diagonal and creating threats and going up 2, which ought to win the game at this point if I play well, which I doubt I will. Bishop to d4, it was the recommended move, going to be up 2.5, didn't do it, instead exchanged off. And so I made an error. Okay. Queen takes is recommended, except he plays knight takes, giving up the exchange. And the computer wants me to play bishop takes a1, bishop takes a1, bishop takes a1. It seems like a natural idea, except I like the two bishops, and I like attacking on the king side with them on. Regrettably, he can just trade this bishop off now. So my idea of not taking the exchange probably is flawed. You know, I probably lost a big advantage here, because now I just got to take it anyway. Except I don't. So I'm closing in the king side, and I'm losing my advantage. I'm only up 3/4 of a pawn now, because I'm not playing good, accurate attacking chess. However, I am maintaining close to a 3/4 pawn advantage. And to me, I really like my position, and I'm comfortable attacking out of situations like this. So now he plays h6 and gives me the advantage right back, because I get the pin. And in pinning, I'm also taking over the g4 square, which was a good spot for his e3 knight. And now, as you see, it says he's lost again, but that assumes I play correctly. So it says he needs to unpin himself, but he moves his knight instead, and now the game's over, but not the way I play it. Let's see, he plays h takes, and now h3 is the strong move. And the reason why it's strong is because it allows the rook to come to f3. So we'll see what happens is I bridge a rook, or as they say these days, a rook lift. So I'm intending to really pressure the f-file. Once again, that's like the #1 principle of this opening as far as my tutelage is concerned. So where does he go? He goes from queen to d2. I double, and he's in a lot of trouble. Says he's got to move f4. Stockfish says f3. He moves to protect, which doesn't really protect. And now the right move is rook takes. And yet I play knight takes. Okay, so the idea behind knight takes wasn't really all that bad, simply because I see this threat, and the threat is knight takes g4, which threatens a queen and mate. So it also threatens to come down the f-file kind of horrendously. It says he can move queen to c3 here and try to exchange off, but instead he goes there, and I play knight takes g4 with all these nefarious threats. And I see the engine's already found mate 14, 10, 11. And it says g3 is the only way to fend off the mate threat. He moves knight to h3 and gets another kind of mate. And here it comes, and I don't miss it. And now I believe he resigned. It would eventually be mate in 8 now. But he has to give up his knight, and there's going to be a whole lot of checks. And the handwriting was on the wall, and this was the end of an interesting kind of attack where we completely took over the f-file in the Latvian Gambit.